Hello, welcome to the All Saints community. We are a virtual community for all who believe, doubt, and seek, wanting to provide a place for those of us who have questions or doubts or just need some kind of vibrant interchange or exchange with the people that love God. And that's all we're trying to do here, and would love for you to be a part of what we're doing. And if you are in the Seattle area, December 22nd, from 6 to 8 p.m., we'll be meeting at One Life Church in Seattle. And you can go to our website, believedoubtseek.org, to get all the information that you need on that. Well, as we're in Advent, last week we talked about hope. This week we're going to talk about peace. And our text is 1 John 1, 5 through 10, and we're going to pay close attention to verses 9 and 10. And so I think the start of this, we have to ask a couple of questions. What is a relationship with God? What does it look like? And how can it be something that you know? I think those are really good questions for any of us, whether you've been a person of faith for a long time or a person who's just kind of checking things out. So maybe this will give us a little bit of encouragement or enlightenment, or maybe open up a whole new set of questions to press into. In verse 9 of our text of 1 John chapter 1, it says this: anyone, and I think this is so appropriate for the day that we're in, anyone who claims to be in the light but hates a brother or a sister is still in the darkness. Anyone who loves their brother and sister lives in the light, and there's nothing in them to make them stumble. And so we're going to focus on light. We're going to focus on how that translates into peace. And so, I think something that's really important is knowing God is no small thing. Now, there's a lot of people who know about God, but to know God is an experience. It's a heart experience. It's not just a formal experience that's transcendent. It's really a game changer. It actually brings the reality of who Jesus is to the forefront of anybody's life as the transformation begins to take place from the inside. And that's so critical for us to understand that, sure, there are things that we understand that are beyond us, bigger than us, but this relationship with God, this light within us that provides the peace that we need, really transforms us from the inside. Soren Kierkegaard once said, "Purity of heart is to will one thing, and the essence of who we are flows out of the heart." This is where we see the fruit of transformation. And, even in my experience, and even when I talk with others, it really begins to melt away the fear, the anger, and the worry to really begin to respond to this transformation that takes place. And interestingly, in our text, the writer John points out that this is all based on his eyewitness account of Jesus Christ. So see, it's a personal experience, and this experience with God is really based on the truth of God's existence. And to have an experience with God is to realize it's a subjective experience because everyone experiences God differently, and that's the truth. But it's also based on an objective truth. So it's important because it would be easy for any of us, well, even these writers of the Bible text, to make up any kind of God that they wanted us to know about. And we do the same thing. It'd be easy to make up any kind of God you wanted, like a designer God per se, to fit your circumstances, or just to adjust to your likes and dislikes. And the Bible's clear. Our experiences in coming to faith, our relationship with Jesus, may be different. However, the objective truth of the God of the Bible is not subjective. And again, that's a wrestling match, isn't it? That's a whole thing that you really have to sink your teeth into and really be open to the truth of who God is. The great writer, philosopher C.S. Lewis believed the objective truth of God was based on desire. He says he believed, that the human desire for something transcendent was a strong sign of God's existence. He argued that the desire for happiness is a sign that there was once true happiness, which can only be filled by God. So it's important for us to talk about especially with the culture that we live in, if we only want a God that fits into our understanding of God and only agrees with us, only wants what we want, we really don't have a personal God. Think about it, relationships. To be in a relationship, there's give and take, right? So a relationship with God is one where God will disagree with you. Read the scriptures. There's plenty of places where you get disagreed with, get offended by, being irritated by. That's a relationship. And if we think about, again, love relationships, there are arguments and disagreements. Why? Because we're two different people. And learning how to love the person as they are. And God comes to us and says, look, I love you no matter what, but I realize you're going to have all kinds of issues and problems. And so these are good things. It lets you know that God's real. So practically speaking, the truth of God isn't something that you subscribe to. Rather, in a relationship, it radiates from you. And this is the message of Christmas. The light that John talks about gets turned on in the room, and you realize you don't have anything to fear. Jesus has come to be the light within us. That's why he's our peace. So what does this look like? Well, I think, the practical part of this is, how do we know that God's light is in us? How does anybody know this, right? So I think one thing is there's joy in God's presence. What does that mean? Maybe it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, you know it and you don't forget it. It's just not saying prayers. It's knowing the real presence of God in your life. Check out, if you have a Bible around you, or you can even Google it, Psalm 63, Psalm 84. Once you've experienced God's presence, his absence is noticeable and painful. And this doesn't have to be work or something that you must conjure up. You begin to sense how real God is and how real you are. I think another thing that lets us know that the light is within us is our talking and listening to God. It's a two-way conversation. When we read the Bible, read the Christian scriptures, that's listening. Prayer is talking. So there's a way of praying in which God is essentially a fast food window, right? Here's my order. Please give that to me. A prayer life in relationship with God is you want to be in his presence. You want to just focus your attention on God's presence in your life. And a way to tell that it isn't a two-way relationship, but that it's a one-way relationship is when things are bad, oh man, God's real. And when things are good or you're busy, I know God's there, or maybe he's not, but it doesn't matter because everything's fine. So, what's the motivation for always praying? Well, ask this. What is this showing me about God that I didn't know before? What is this saying to me about my heart so I can be a more forgiving and kinder person? That's a relationship. That's assessment. That's listening to the transformation that's taking place within you. Then I think there's this part that you're not going to like. You have to lose your freedom to gain a new freedom. So if you want to keep your freedom, don't get in any relationships. Don't fall in love, and absolutely don't get married. There is no way to get into a personal relationship without losing your freedom. In a love relationship, both parties are more transparent and more vulnerable. Therefore, they lose their freedom. But we gain a new freedom in that relationship, and it's a freedom to have our hearts filled with the love of another person. This is what God is constantly doing to us and for us. He's pointing out areas that require us to surrender freedom so we can be freer. And finally, you discover that your relationships are deeper. It really takes community to know a person. You need to know a person surrounded by other people. This is what makes them real. This is why we can't do this in isolation. This is, honestly, this is one of the things about being a virtual community that's a little difficult. How do we learn about this relationship virtually? If I'm around other people, I can text with them, or maybe I can get on a video with them. I think it's critical, and this is one thing that we do want to say as a virtual community. Find people that you can coffee with, have a meal with, even go to a church with. And when you're in your virtual space, maybe a text exchange is good. Maybe being in a group chat is something that's helpful, because we do learn from each other there. So here we go. In Lord of the Rings, those in the fellowship brought out something in the other that could not be seen in any other relationship because of the journey they were on. If you think about that, right? I mean, Frodo and Sam, Merry and Pippin, they all were in a relationship with each other, bringing out different things about each other that helped them love and respect and trust one another. You should know, when I was writing this, I was listening to the Fellowship of the Ring soundtrack. So there you go. And then finally, let me conclude with this. I've been here many times with this illustration, and I have a favorite storybook, and it's The Velveteen Rabbit. And it's one that I just can't ignore or get away from because the illustration is just so beautiful. And so there's a character, the Velveteen Rabbit, then there's his friend, the Skin Horse. They're having this conversation about being real. And this is what Skin Horse says to the Velveteen Rabbit. He says, "Real isn't how you are made. It's a thing that happens to you. Sometimes it hurts, but when you are real, you don't mind being hurt. It doesn't happen all at once. You become. Once you are real, you can't get ugly, except to people who don't understand. Once you are real, you can't become unreal again. It lasts for always." And in the manger, God became real in the person of Jesus. He became like us so he could relate to us, walk among us, hug us, and be real to us. He became our peace. And when he looks at you and he looks at me, he sees who we are, everything about us, the tattered edges, the places in our heart that we keep the lights off on. And you know what he does? He says, "Look, you can't be unreal to me ever again. You will last for always with me." So no matter who you are, what you've done, where you've been, God is safe to give yourself to. You can be at peace as you give yourself to somebody like that who is real. This is Christmas. Jesus, thank you so much for being real. Thank you so much for looking at us and seeing us for who we are, that you bring peace to our life, that we don't have to walk around in the dark, that the light within you, which becomes the light within us, brightens the room so we can see where we step. We can see the places where we're feeling alone. And God, you come in and fill the void. So Lord, help us understand that for Christmas and be able to pass it on to other people. In Jesus' name, amen. Hey, thanks for listening. If you're listening on one of our platforms, please like us, maybe even write a little review. We really appreciate it. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and looking forward to Merry Christmas. Okay, bye-bye.